So now, thank you so much for being with me again this week. I'm T.R. Coverson. I'm your host of Masculinity, Blessing or Curse. I'm excited about you being here with me. Thank you so much for tuning in. And please subscribe because I'd love to talk to you, love to have this conversation, this dialogue continue. Last week we had the opening of the podcast. Oprah did a podcast with a gentleman by the name of Scott Galloway regarding his book, Notes on Being a Man. Awesome material. This video is awesome. Take a look at it for yourself. But I'm interested in your comments. And with this, my producer has allowed us to be able to type in your questions, your comments, and we'll address those. We'd love to talk about it because we want to stir this conversation up, this crisis of our young men. We had I think I talked about it last couple of weeks ago at our church. Had three different generations of men come forward, and unfortunately, we only had one gentleman from the millennial generation, and no one was represented from Gen Z. And if we're talking about getting quality and getting positiveness in our young men, we have to be able to, one, court them with words that would allow them to be comfortable in the environment that we're living in, and to be able to do that so that they are receptive to it. And that means an exchange, but we can pick up more of this. Let's go more into this.
Your personal perspective for how men can begin to show up in the world. You talk about that, everything from fitness to nutrition to money to work, and how to meet women. The thing that struck me was that men 18 to 25, 45% of men 18 to 25 have not engaged personally on asking a woman out for a date, or I find that to be shocking.
Almost half of young men have never asked a woman out in person. And there's a bunch of factors around that. One, it's difficult. I mean, it's just not easy. One of the key skills I think a man has to treat or try and give his son is to how to express romantic interest while making that person feel safe. And this is only anecdotal evidence. When I go out and I'm in social situations, I'll have women approach me and say, I'm here, I'm single and I'm ready to mingle, I look amazing, and a man hasn't approached me in 3 months, right? And 80% of women still expect the man to make that initial approach. And also, to a certain extent, men's interest in romantic and sexual relationships has been pathologized. Like there's something wrong if you want to meet women and ultimately have sex. And I think we need to start celebrating it, because a man's desire to be in a relationship and, quite frankly, to have physical encounters is fire. And that is, it can be destructive. You spend too much time with porn, you start objectifying women, it can lead to misogynist or dangerous places. But that fire can also be captured in an engine and create tremendous progress. Wanting to have sex, if channeled correctly, which it is for most men, makes you want to dress better, smell better, have a kindness practice, have your act together, develop the resilience and the confidence to approach someone, and maybe they're not interested, and guess what? You're both going to be fine. These are key attributes. We need to celebrate men wanting to have relationships and making an approach. And if you don't develop those skills and that resilience and those calluses from rejection, you're going to struggle in other parts of your life. So the most rewarding thing in life is relationships, full stop. And I think the most rewarding relationship is building a life with someone and having kids. I'm not saying you have to have that to be happy. And quite frankly, just to be raw about this, when I saw my partner who I've had kids with, I wasn't thinking I'd really like lower rates on auto insurance. I was thinking, just to be blunt, I would really like to have sex with her. And that forced me to be a better person, to try to have a kindness practice, to demonstrate excellence. And 18 months later, we had our first son. So let's stop demonizing men for wanting to procreate. It's a wonderful thing as long as you channel it into wanting to be a better man. The only thing I can guarantee you is that anything wonderful in your life is going to have a lot of no's. Full stop. And unfortunately, men aren't getting to know because they're afraid to, or they have what they think is a cheap substitute for these relationships online.
So let's talk for a moment about your parents.
Wow.
What happened?
What a just boatload of information that was just dropped. One, men 18 to 25, 45% of them have never personally asked a woman for a date. Almost half, 45%, 18 to 25, have never even asked a woman for a date. What's happening here? And that's a phenomenal idea. Now, in the past, there were times when, my first two kids were girls. So the idea of going to a prom or something like that, then there was a boy that had to come to my house. And, okay, so I'm kidding when I say this, but I'm not. Bad Boys 2, you watched that and you made sure that when that boy came to the door, he was intimidated as heck. And he brought your daughter home at the time you said. But all of that, there was some comfort in doing it. There was a prom that they went to and all of those things. And there was things like that. There was even this situation where if you're all in the same church, you knew this boy or this girl from the church community that you're involved in. Well, young people are not attending church in the same capacity as they were in prior generations. We kiddingly say, people in the baby boomer generation say, my parents had a drug problem. A drug problem? Yes, they drug us all to church and we were going whether we wanted to or not. And that was the situation. So you got to know other people in the neighborhood, male and female, because your kids played in the same area. There were no there was play dates. My grandkids have play dates and they establish those and they go out. But you played in the same community. We walked to the same church and those kind of things happened, but that's not the case now. So now you have boys 18 to 25 who've never asked a girl on a date. Now, a lot of reasons for that. Lot can be taken to deal with that. One, he's intimidated by it. Because he's looking at social media and because he can't dunk the ball and because whatever. And you have to be a certain type. You have to be 6 feet tall. You have to be, all of those things that go with what the popular guy is. And if he's not that, if he has acne and he's 5'1" and so forth, he may be looking at himself in such a way that he's not confident enough to ask anyone for anything. And that grows into his college years or even as an adult. So now we have this stutter step in trying to ask for a date. Now, something else that he mentioned there, the idea of being prepared for a no. He talks about gaining the calluses that no's create. One of my most favorite players in basketball, NBA, is Steph Curry. And this same thing applies to Kobe Bryant as well. Kobe was asked a question, are you ever afraid or intimidated about taking the last shot with 2 seconds left and you're down by 2 points and you're going to take this three to win or lose the game? You're down by 2, it's 2 seconds left, and you now have the ball. Are you intimidated by taking the shot? No, he's not. No, he's not. Well, why aren't you? Because I've been to practice, and Kobe's practice, the Mamba mentality. I've been to practice and I've shot this shot hundreds of times. And there's a high likelihood that I'm going to make this shot because I've done it. There was a lot of times I didn't make it, but I learned from those times that I failed to know what my elevation needs to be, what my form needs to be. And it's exactly the same. Once you do it enough times, you get a better record at it. Steph Curry, no less than 500 to 1,000 shots every day. That's why he's the number one shooter in history, because he does it a lot. You don't get to be successful at anything without climbing the ladder out of failures. Joseph in the Bible. Joseph is one who received this dream from God. He's got this dream. His brothers are going to bow down to him, and his mother and father is going to bow down to him. He told his brothers, he told his mother and father, 2 separate occasions. And you know what happened to him? His brothers sold him into slavery. There were calluses involved. There were a lot of no's, systematic no's in Joseph's life before he actually attained the success that God had promised him. It was preordained. So we have to get comfortable with this idea that no is a part of the success that you make. I often tell when I was doing some substitute teaching, and I would tell the boys, I say, look, no one ever came out of the womb walking. Usain Bolt is one of the greatest of all time, but he did not come out of the womb running. He came out like everyone else. He came out crawling, falling, and crying. That's how we gain success. Crawling, falling, and crying. And that's something we have to be able to pass on to another generation so that they are not engulfed with the lies that people tell on YouTube or whatever it is, that there's all this kinds of successful overnight. It's not true. It's not true. And if it did happen that way, it won't last. It happens only because you continuously do it. Now, something else he says, this idea that we have demonized the idea of young boys or men in general wanting to have sexual relationships. Well, sex is God's idea. We're not here. The stork is not true. The Cabbage Patch, that's not true. None of that is true. It's like Santa Claus. Anyway, it's the idea that, as he was alluding to here, fire out of control will damage everything. But fire under control is very profitable. We cook with fire. In California, I understand they have fire season. So there's fires that destroy. Those are fires that are out of control. In the boomer generation, it was not something that we talked about. Sow your wild oats. That's the only thing it was. Then you get married. That's the conversation. Now we have to have the conversations. We have to have the conversations that we talk about it. It's not something that's a demonic plague that you have. It's something that's natural. Testosterone will kick in. Masculinity will kick in. And I used to tell my girls will come home from high school or college and say, well, Daddy, he's not like that. I said, dear, let me tell you something. You think he's not like that. Well, let me tell you this. If he's not like that and you marry him, probably about a month or 2 or 3 months after that, if that long, you'll come back and ask me, Daddy, what's wrong with him? Let's go back.
Between them and your life after their divorce, that was all a huge, huge influence on you. How did your mother and father shape who you are as a man?
I was raised by a single immigrant mother, lived and died a secretary, light of my life, right? And my father, like a lot of us, was a very handsome Scotsman, not very sophisticated, left at the age of 13. And just to be crude, he was a handsome man with a Scottish accent in 70s California, which meant he could not only think with his dick, he could listen to it. He was married and divorced. I can't believe I just said that on Oprah.
Yeah.
He was married and divorced.
I can see how you could think with it. I'm just trying to understand how he listens to it. But anyway, okay.
Married and divorced 4 times. Started his 3rd marriage while he was still married to my mom. My father was not an especially high character person in terms of how he treated women and how he treated my mom. And so not having a male role model around, he moved away. I think took quite frankly, a toll on me. But the worst part about it was he wasn't very good to my mom. He wasn't nice. And the lesson I carry forward as a father, I do think the best thing you can do to raise good men, quite frankly, is just to be a very loving, supportive partner. You want good men who are more secure and better in relationships, they will model you. You can tell them whatever you want. They're just going to watch what you're doing. The first rule as a man is you need to be very good to their mother. Even if you end up going through divorce, the more generous you are, the kinder you are, I think your sons are going to notice that and going to model it. My mom was, every day, when you get older, you get more thoughtful. That's the good news. The bad news is you get more thoughtful and you start thinking about, how did I get on Oprah, right? Mm. And the way I got on Oprah was, one, I'm a product of big government. The generosity and vision of California taxpayers and the regents of UC. I got to go to UCLA and Berkeley for almost no money. Had a 74% admissions rate when I applied. This year was 9%. But also just the irrational passion for my well-being and my mother. Every day, I remember going to lunch with my mom. I was teenager. I was 5'10" with terrible acne, 110 pounds. And she would literally stop and go, "You are so handsome. I can't get over it." And she would sit there and stare at me. Anyway, if you believe, if you say to a kid every day in, explicit and implicit ways, "You're wonderful," I think at some point they start to believe that.
Yeah.
So that confidence is still with
That's
me.
really one of the first things I underlined on page 28 when you said, this is something for us all to remember. Having a good person express how wonderful you are hundreds of times changes everything. I was tethered. I'd never thought of it that way before. Having a person express how wonderful you are hundreds of times actually tethers you in a
Yeah.
way that nothing else can. Yeah.
Yeah, I was grounded, and the thing is, and this goes back to mentorship, and there's a lot of men in this audience, and by virtue of the fact you're here, you probably have your act together more than you realize.
Yeah.
And there's a fear that you need to be a CEO or a baller or an adolescent psychiatrist to get involved in a young man's life. It is so easy to add value. What I would suggest is masculinity is taking care of yourself, taking care of your community, taking care of your country. But I think the ultimate expression of masculinity is to get involved in a young man's life. And the place to start is with single mothers in your workplace. You want to come over and watch a ball game. Would you like to hang out? I'm washing my car this weekend. Would you like to come over? But that really is the single point. And even just saying that boys needed men a few years ago was seen as triggering. What, women can't raise men? Of course they can. But the research is clear. Boys need men, and there's an absence of them in our society right now.
Yeah, I remember years ago doing a show and a lot of women, single mothers, getting offended when the experts said at that time that you can be a great mother, but you can't be a father, because a lot of mothers think that they are also the fathers, but men need male role models, period. That's what you're saying.
100%. And also, to be clear, I think that masculine, we talk in the book about masculine and feminine energy, that masculine energy can be brought in a household headed by two women. That feminine energy can be brought, that mix. I think the mix of masculine and feminine energy is the greatest alliance in history. The genders have done a great job of convincing themselves that it's the other gender's fault. And I hold on to that the greatest alliance in history is a mix of the wonderful kind of healing, nurturing, gracefulness of femininity and the more risk-aggressive, more what I'll call protective instincts of masculine energy. But I want to be clear, neither of those attributes are sequestered to people born as men or women. My closest male friends tend to be more feminine in nature. I'm drawn to men who are more caring. But I do think masculinity comes easier to people born as males. And that if they need a code, they can lean into an aspirational form of masculinity. I think that we all need a code. And I think young men are desperate for some sort of guardrails.
Okay. On page 137, you say every man needs to develop a code, a series of adjectives or behaviors that guide and define his everyday behavior. So how do young men develop a code amidst so much, divisiveness and distractions? How do you get a code?
Well, people get it from different places. They can get it from their religion.
Yeah.
They can get it from the military. They can get it from their family. I got my first code, I would argue, from my workplace. It was just a way you approached work and other people, and that was very helpful to me. But what I put forward in the book is I think masculinity can serve as a code, but an aspirational vision of it, specifically be a provider. I think every man at the outset of his career should assume at some point he might have to take economic responsibility for his household.
Because you believe that's one of the tenets of being a man.
Well, I think in a capitalist society, men are disproportionately evaluated on their economic viability and also the way men evaluate themselves. And if you're not economically viable, I think you're going to have a tough time having the self-esteem, having society respect you, and quite frankly, attracting mates. And we don't like to say this out loud, but 75% of women say economic viability is key to a mate. Only 25% of men say this about women. So the reality is, as much as we'd like to think it doesn't matter, when the woman starts...
Wow. Do you see why this is a conversation we have to have? Because he addresses so many things, so much meat on the bone. Let's see if I can go back and pick up a couple of things. First, I had a deacon say this to me some years ago, and he says it again here. The best gift that you could ever give to your children is to love their mother. Did you get that? The best gift that you could ever give your kids is to love their mother. He speaks to here the idea that more than anything else is what lays the groundwork for your sons being better men, but also your daughters being or looking for the type of man that you have displayed to them. That is very powerful. The best gift that you could give to your children is to love their mother. I ran into a guy, kind of embarrassed to even say this, and I'll do it short. His son was disruptive in class. I was substitute teaching. Son was disruptive in class, and I wanted to talk to him to see if I could get some control from him for his son. And I met him at a certain restaurant and one morning, and we were talking, and he brought with him a 9-year-old daughter. He said was his daughter as well. The boy was middle school, so I guess he's 12, 13, whatever. I said, is this your only child other than your son? And he blushed. He said, I said, well, yeah, do you have other kids? He said, and here's his quote. He says, man, I was out there. I said, what does that mean? How many kids do you have? 29. 29 children. Now, I'm just blown away. Really? 29? I don't know if I remember asking him how many women were involved in that, but 29. There's no way possible, and I, of course, could no longer have the conversation with him about his son because he's not there. You can't be anywhere where there are 29 children unless you have a plantation and they're all out in the field. 29. And there's no way possible you can give proper credence to the mothers of all those children. We have fallen by the wayside in that. You have, men who have multiple women and multiple children spread out. It's impossible to be a father that way, to give them the time that they need. If you don't agree with that, punch me back. I just can't see it. My wife and I have 3 children, and it's busy for us taking care of the 3 that are in the house with us. It's phenomenal. Now, just a footnote, I do think he mentioned a little bit of white privilege in there, some of those things that came to him. And yet, in the generation that he's talking about, my same generation, Pell Grants and those things existed. Some of those things happened. Well, let's just keep going past that. In terms of role models, and I love this statement that he made, because oftentimes you think that you have nothing to offer men. Because you're not a baller. You can't dunk the ball. You can't play basketball anymore. You got bad knees, bad back, bad hips. So all of those things. What he said was the person that is able to inspire, someone who is able to say to that young boy, young man, you're good. You're enough just where you are. You don't have to be someone else. If you're able to speak to his mind, his heart, so that he believes in himself, you're the role model. That's all. All that you need is to care. You don't need to be all these grand things that some of us may be thinking that you need to be in order to be a role model for him. You simply need to care enough to say, you can do this. I believe in you. I think you can. I trust you. I'm going to help you with it the best way I can. And you are there with him to remind him of his own value. That is what makes the role model make itself. He mentioned this word tethered. And to be honest with you, I had to look it up to be sure. He said, because of those words, because of that inspiration of someone saying they believe in me, his mother telling him that you're a handsome boy, even though he looks at himself in the mirror and he does not see that, she saw that. And if you do go this far, even if you don't have someone saying that to you, know that that is what God says about you. He says, I love you. You are the head and not the tail. You are above and not beneath. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Tethered, I'm stuck to you. We are as though we are one. We're tethered together. We are intricately involved. Let's see. And here's something that I think is critical as well. The way you define manhood. You see, we've been given these definitions of manhood, and we think that it has to do with your athletic prowessness, your muscular physique, and all of it. If you didn't have a six-pack, you're not a man. And if you don't have a deep voice, if you're not 6 feet tall, or all of those things. No. We have to be able to define what manhood means to us in our own light. Now, he mentioned something, and that's a conversation. We'll leave that. I'll look forward to your comments on that. But he mentioned something about a code, establishing a code, and I think you have to be very intentional about your definition of manhood, about your code. Now, he alluded to certain places and things that may generate a code for you. I would suggest take a moment to intentionally write down how you identify yourself. I've written down a few things myself in doing something like that. I am a Christian. I'm an athlete. I'm a leader. I'm a writer. I'm a speaker. And if you identify yourself as those things and you make those same decisions, there are certain things that you have to be able to say and do if you categorize yourself as that. If you say you're a Christian, you need to read the Bible, study the Word of God, and follow the principles that Jesus lays forward. If you are an athlete, then you can't just watch television and watch sports on TV. There are certain things you have to do in order to justify your being able to call yourself that. But he also alluded to things that may contribute to your being able to develop a code. It's something that you got in the military. Many guys will say, you are, for example, a coverson, and you have to live up to the name of being a coverson. And so that becomes your code. That becomes a thing that you look toward. Scripturally, he alluded to a couple of things, and I want to pick up these. A man's responsibility, from my perspective, in Genesis, he talks about him being a provider. He's a provider. And in the world that we live in today, he needs to be about making some money, because women are looking for, or everyone is looking for, you being able to provide. You have to provide for yourself. The Bible says you don't work, you don't eat. So you have to be a provider. You need to be a protector. You need to be, in my view, a priest. So a godly man, provider, protector, priest, and procreator. So all of those things are scripturally in the book of Genesis, where he tells us to be fruitful, multiply. But you want to get those financial pieces in line. Chris Rock does a joke part of it. He says, let's see, there are three entities that are loved unconditionally. Women are loved unconditionally. Children are loved unconditionally. Pets are loved unconditionally. Not men. You have to be able to produce something. You have to have some money. And oftentimes, that's the way you're going to be looked upon. If you cannot produce something to substantiate the fact that I exist with a purpose. Adam had a job before Eve was even created. Tend the garden. And so those things were there. I am so looking forward to the comments that you will make. So type those in, and we'll address those and have this conversation. Look forward to maybe having this conversation even more in the future. Let's see, did I miss something that I wanted to talk about? Boys need men. Oh, one other thing he alluded to. This idea of the gender mix being just such a godsend. I don't know that he used that term, but I will. The idea that there is a male, there is a female. The first time that there is a negative in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, he talks about he made the heavens and the earth, that's good. He made the fish in the sea, that's good. He made the animals, that's good. He made man, very good. But then he says, it is not good for man to be alone. That's not good. And so he put man to sleep and extracted the rib from him and created woman out of him. So in the marriage, he says, and they two shall become one flesh. So it's putting back together the thing that God separated so that man could have companionship and relationship. Because short of that, he was there by himself. Goats had male and female goats, and lions, male and female lionesses. But there was no one for the man, no helpmeet for him. As we get married, we reunite what God had separated, and he did it for our own companionship and relationship. So as we intermix, you get that perfect synergy of male and female together, and now producing children that would have that same embrace. Wow, what a phenomenal thing. We need to have this conversation. Let's have it more and more. Kwanzaa coming up this week, and I look forward to happy Kwanzaa to those of you that celebrate that. Get your candles out, and we'll look forward to all of the things that are involved in that. God bless you. God keep you. Looking forward to sharing with you in 20 and 26. Get ready, get ready, get ready. Do the things that you have promised yourself to do. I turned 70 a few weeks ago, and so now it's time to put those things, the things that you said you were going to do, let's get it done. Let's get it done. All right? God bless you. God keep you. We'll see you next time.